You might have missed the video that I made a few days back riding up to Memphis to pick up this motorcycle that I rode across the Transamerica Trail with my buddy Richard. This is the motorcycle that I wanted to try to replace the one I crashed in May.
Right.
I was very excited not only to throw my leg over this machine, but to also ride it around the yard. I wasn't ready to get it out on the street, but I did want to see how close of a fit and see what kind of modifications I was going to have to do to be able to ride this thing in the future. One of the things that was most clear, even though I was able to get my foot on the peg, I knew that I was going to have to get something adjusted. So after a visit to my prosthetist, he shaved my prosthetic down even more than he did the previous time, and I was able to put my foot on the peg comfortably and ride it. So once I got this adjustment made and then a few modifications to the motorcycle, I was ready for my first street ride. So stay tuned. That's what I'm doing today. Well, I got to tell you, folks, I'm pretty scared. I rode about a mile down the road to fill up the tank, which is the farthest I have ridden on a motorcycle since May 25th. So yeah, I'm a little bit terrified, but mostly of dropping my bike, falling over, not being prepared. Trepidation, I talked about it the other day. This may just be an hour-long trip. I don't know. I haven't checked my tires, although they look pretty good. Yeah, I mean, they got tubes in them. What could go wrong? All right, so I think we're just going to go towards the river. I don't have a tag, but I got insurance, so just in case the man pulls me over, I'll have something for him. Well, now I got to get the thing in neutral. I gotta get rid of those neutral kill switch. Oh, fourth gear. No wonder. There we go. All right, let's go. The battery is dying. Put it on a charger last night. It was weak, just cranking it up. I think this DVR/navigation system is pulling a lot of juice, so I'll get that replaced this week too. Maybe I'll get a tag next week. We shall see. Off into the mysterious blue yonder. If I don't fall before I get out of the parking lot. Woo. Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I mean, I'm hoping by the end of the day that I won't be quite as terrified. Like I will have a few miles under my belt. I mean, it's not like I've forgotten how to ride. I've got to learn how to stop. I've got to learn how to go. I learned how to operate this new helmet. And of course, like expected, even though I put in tons of effort to try to get this helmet wired for a microphone and run it into the camera, before I even made this turn here, the adapter that holds the mic cable popped out. I guess it was due to the wind, but anyway, I don't know how to describe the feeling, because it was a lot of fear and a lot of unknowns. I don't know what is going to go wrong. My biggest fear is stepping into gravel with my with my wooden leg, just because it's one of those things where I can't feel it. By the time I realize that my foot is moving, I mean, in theory, it hasn't happened to me yet, but the idea that I could step into gravel and the first knowledge that I have is that my foot is slipping, is to see the horizon moving, and that's just a big fear, and it's gonna take me a while. But this was a hell of a first start to the day. It was a perfect, cool, sunny day, just a few clouds in the sky, and nothing went wrong. Nothing major went wrong at the start of the trip. I could see things progressing as I rode further. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of really hard to express what was going on in my head, even though the intention was to capture it all on audio. Okay, that's the first leg of my journey. Tires still look okay, but they could be half flat for all I know. Alright, so this is a very tricky, I would say, a very tricky road. Next 1.25 miles, I think it's more than that. Damn, this leg is feeling so heavy. I don't know why that is. Alright. Trying to get my shit together. Right now I'm really just trying to hold this freaking bike up. It's not heavy, it feels so weird trying to hold the bike up with what feels like a broomstick. That's what it feels like right now. Anytime I put all my weight on the right leg, it feels like I'm trying to stand on a broomstick. Balance even. Ugh. All right, let's get on it. Let's go to the river. And yes, before anybody mentions it, I was riding with my chin bar up like I did back in May. It's a habit that I'm going to have to I'm gonna have to get better at it. Either that, or just give up and say screw it. I don't care if my face is mangled. I don't care. What am I really putting at risk? Have y'all seen my face? But yeah, it's in a long list of bad habits that I have, and I actually have some good solid boots on, and the gloves that you see me wearing are not the gloves that I crashed in. They're very similar. Got them at Home Depot. They're very good quality gloves. I have some actual motorcycle gloves, armored, and I had to dig them out of a box. But yeah, it's a it's a slow process, but it's a process, and I'm slowly getting back into the groove. Um, and I would like to say behind that chin bar is a big, huge smile, but it was probably as much terror as it was smile, just because it's it kind of felt like riding somebody else's motorcycle. It really felt like riding somebody's bike that I could not afford if I scratched it, and that's kind of what it felt more so than anything. It's not that I was afraid of pushing it too hard into a corner. It was just the stopping and the starting, the putting my foot into a pile of gravel. That's what came to my mind more than anything else on this ride is what happens if I get off the bike wrong? Am I going to be able to get the bike off me? Am I going to break anything? Am I going to ruin my prosthetic and I can't get back on the bike? I mean, all these things were going through my head. It wasn't uh, it wasn't a thought like you might think that I'm worried about getting wadded up in a ditch. It had nothing to do with actual riding the bike. Even though I'm riding without a rear brake, you know, the riding that I'm doing here is essentially it's all controlled with the front anyway. I'm gonna have a opportunity to talk about the using the rear brake and why it's important to me coming up. I get to a dead end and I do a quick U-turn, but that's really the only time that I consistently use a rear brake other outside of the dirt. When I'm uh, riding in the dirt, when I'm riding in anything that's slicker than normal, I depend on the rear brake a little bit more in those situations. One of my favorite spots, Block 17. Got some boys out fishing today. I hope I did not misgender those people. All right, so I usually make these U-turns using my rear brake. And that's important. I tried to tell people why the rear brake is so important to me, because I think a lot of people have this misconception that you can just jam on it, no big deal. Well, I use my rear brake to turn. So I modulate my rear brake with my clutch and my throttle to be able to turn, to make quick turns like U-turns. So it's very important to me, and how I've learned to ride over the past few years. It's very important because that's how I do it. And I can do it with the front brake. It's just I don't usually do it with the front brake. So I'm just going to have to relearn. But it's a completely different story riding in dirt. Because one thing a lot of people don't realize, when you're riding in dirt, the worst thing you can do is lock up your front wheel. Because when your wheel stops spinning in the front, typically your bike falls down. It's called a low side. When your front tire loses traction and it stops spinning, in other words, if you've got the brakes on, your bike is not, it's not turning anymore. So your bike basically tries to do a pit on you, and the way it does it is it pushes the rear around one side or the other, thus making your bike fall down. And there's probably lots of examples of a front tire washing out on the track, on TV. You'll see a lot of people. You see a lot of guys on the street just grab a handful of brake, and the front just falls down. The bike just falls down. And in fact, I think that's what happened to Jim the other day. Old guy on a bike. I think he grabbed a handful of brake, and I think it was probably either he doesn't have analog brakes on that Goldwing, or they just weren't working. It could be either or. But also, he's pulling a trailer, and the weight of that trailer probably tried to pit his bike. That's what I'm thinking. I haven't talked to him about it, but I bet that's a pretty strong candidate of why he crashed. Because he appears to be a pretty good rider. He puts thousands of miles on his bike every year. It's probably put more miles on his bikes than most people watching will ever put on theirs. So he knows how to ride. Just, when your front wheel loses traction, your bike falls over. Unless you're an amazing rider with amazing skills. And you'll see some of those guys out on the track. The front wheel stops spinning and they keep it upright somehow. I don't really know. But back to rolling off road, it's much more dangerous going off road because you have so much less traction in dirt, in gravel, in mud.
Well, enough of the motorcycle physics lesson. I hope you were taking notes because there will be a test. But regardless, that was probably one of the few instances where you got a little bit of audio despite my microphone difficulty. So I wanted to share that with you, and maybe you might take something home from traction. But it's a big deal for me because I ride off-road and I require the ability to use rear-only brakes. I've had a lot of suggestions about people that don't really understand much about riding off-road, but if you're going down a big slope, you can't let the front wash out. So hammering on the front brake going down a big slope, gravel, sand, anything like that, it's a requirement to be able to stay upright. And here I am demonstrating my ability to stand on the pegs. This is a really big milestone here. Number one, because I've got to be able to get my butt off the seat on long rides, but more importantly, riding over obstacles. It's very important that you protect your spine and keep from getting bucked off the bike on big gnarly whoops. Well, ladies and germs, the first ride is in the bag. I'm very excited to get out. I don't know, it's probably 30 miles, maybe 40 miles. Not a big long trip, but a nice loop. And enough to bring my confidence back up enough to start making my mind start thinking about what I've got to do to keep the bike upright. And mainly, the things that I've got to remember is just starting and stopping. That's the big deal. It's a huge deal. And you might not understand what a big deal it is until you try walking on a broomstick. And that's basically what it feels like. You put your foot down and it's like, oh, yeah. So getting on, getting off, starting and stopping, but everything else just kind of seems just normal. And I do want to demonstrate one more thing because I've gotten a lot of questions. So this may be the hardest thing I do. I may have to try to start getting in on the other side because a lot of people have suggested that that's got to be easier, but I don't know. I've never gotten in on that side. I don't want to say I'm not going to start now because I'm looking for solutions. But as I've said many times before, there is no movement in my ankle. I can't move my ankle up and down. Same thing, I can't use my heel. The only thing I can do is lift both, but barely. Without lifting with my leg, that is about as much as I could do. So to be able to move my foot forward, to be able to move my foot to operate a brake, I have to move my hips. So I have to twist on the bike. My butt is getting off the seat when I do that. It's the only way that thing will operate. And I don't see any way around it. There's no such thing as moving my heel without lifting my legs. And that's just not an option. If you think of the physics of what your brakes will do if you mash them too hard, then you'll understand. And on top of all that, I don't have any feeling. All the feeling in my leg comes from right here. So all the pressure comes from right here. And there's a lot of pressure on my leg right now. I don't know the difference between, up and down a quarter of an inch. But anyway, not just that, I can't even turn my foot towards the lever. So that's the one thing that you can do on your feet. You can push them down like that and you can push them side to side. I can't do that. So everybody that's trying to help me by telling me how to do it with my foot, you're wasting your breath and you're wasting your keystroke. So I hope that takes care of that illusion. But thanks for your comments anyway. Let's see. No, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to get off on that side yet. I've been getting on a motorcycle from the left side my whole entire adult life and a few years before that. And this is not that much different than the way it's always been, especially on this bike, especially when it's loaded down. It's just different. That's all I got, folks.